Hello and welcome. Well, there was a flurry of correspondence between the tireless gay activist Father James Martin and Pope Francis on Saturday at the end of January. Father Martin's whole ministry is bound up by his sexual identity and his desire to have Catholic understanding of it changed. And it followed an interview Pope Francis gave with Associated Press, in which the Pope emphasised that homosexuality was not a crime. Father Martin immediately wrote to the Pope asking for clarification and was, at once, favoured with a reply. The correspondence turned out to be interesting for a wider audience as well, because it brought to the surface the underlying issues that drive the culture wars over sexuality. During the interview with AP, the Pope had imagined a conversation in which, while remarking that being gay was not a crime, someone might offer the objection that being gay was a sin, to which the Pope replied, well, it's also a sin to lack charity, to help one another. In being asked to clarify his views by Father Martin, Pope Francis wrote in his explicatory letter, "When I said it was a sin, I was simply referring to Catholic moral teaching, which says that every sexual act outside marriage is a sin. Of course, one must also consider the circumstances which may decrease or eliminate fault." And these two statements together have created something of a stir. On the one hand, Pope Francis has commendably been restating Catholic ethical teaching. Every sexual act outside marriage is a sin. On the other hand, somewhat ambiguously, he has drawn in another idea which, when linked to the public discussion about homosexual love, may work to undermine Catholic teaching. Well, you might think so if you read the Pope's biographer, Austin Ivory, because he certainly thought so. In a hasty retweet of Father Martin's correspondence, he triumphantly proclaimed, "This is how church teaching develops. The unfortunate phrase, intrinsically disordered, source of so much hurt and misunderstanding, is now de facto abandoned long ago, is now officially junked." So what had he understood the Pope to mean? Well, to pick up, if I may say so, the closet semiotics, one needs to know what the argument from the homosexual and progressive pressure groups is. On the one hand, Christian ethical teaching has emphasized the given categories of moral and social activity. And that's what the Pope's referring to when he confidently reiterates the very simple and straightforward Christian ethical position that sex belongs only within the category of Christian marriage to be holy. And when it's expressed outside the category of marriage, it's unholy. And since homosexual erotic appetite can only be satisfied between two members of the same sex outside real marriage, it lacks biological and spiritual order. It is therefore intrinsically disordered. The spiritual analysis is no more nuanced than the biological reality. The needs of the soul are mismatched inasmuch as the same unambiguous way as the genitals are biologically mismatched. But the progressive lobby has taken an important ethical caveat, and it has turned it into a new and superior ethical law. The principle is the one Pope Francis is referring to when he says that culpability or fault is affected by the context. One must also consider, he says, the circumstances which may decrease or eliminate fault. Well, this elimination of fault is quite some antidote to the understanding of sin. Might even be thought to remove it completely. The usual way that the awareness that context matters is explained is to imagine a hypothetical situation where a child is hungry or starving and the child steals a loaf of bread. Then so the injustice and the hunger mitigate the blame for what is an action, the category of which is theft. Maybe it even justifies it. Well, ethicists argue over such hypothetical things. And there's clearly an important caveat to be made. We're not automatons living inside a mechanical ethical system. So those who wish to change the Church's teaching on sex offer the following argument. What if, they say, the quality of sexual affection between two people who are not married to each other might justify their actions? What if, for example, they are deeply in love and they reach such levels of ethically impressive intimacy, tenderness, need, affection, fidelity and permanence that the merits accumulated by all this virtuous emotion and affection outweigh the sin of expressing them in the wrong category? To drive this home, it might be suggested that two homoerotically affectionate people have kind, generous, perhaps even a charming intimacy, and if you set this alongside maybe another hypothetical straight couple in a different category, marriage, who are going through a difficult patch, whose sexual attraction is low, poor, unsympathetic, maybe unsuccessful, perhaps badly matched, then surely the gay sexual intimacy is ethically superior to the straight and rather more incompetent or unsympathetic intimacy. Is it not even more loving? But immediately we can see that the highest value in this argument is what kind of loving sex are you having? And that's very much a prime concern of our culture. This is the new gold standard of ethics, and not what is the category of relationship that you are expressing affection and commitment in. But is the integrity of the idea of a spiritual category undermined or reconfigured by the quality of sexual affection and intimacy, if such things can actually be judged? Who's to judge this quality? How can we test the growing progressive claim that the category doesn't matter as much as the quality of the loving intimacy expressed between a hypothetical, in this case usually gay, couple? But what would we say to a brother and sister whose sexual relationship took place outside marriage and was incestuous, a different category? Does the quality of their love, remember always the mantra that love is love, meaningless but powerful, does the quality of their love outweigh the fact that it is incest and not marriage? It's the wrong category. And what about the minor attracted stepfather, previously known as a paedophile, who wants to express his love to his young stepdaughter with a degree of sincere, intense affection and with a terrifying degree of permanence? Is love still love? Let's take the category in another direction. Let's say that two unmarried people feel such an unflowing torrent of loving, sexual and intimate affection of the highest quality, remember, that they feel its integrity requires them to invite a third person into the intimacy, what is known nowadays as turning a couple into a throuple, different category again. The argument that context or intention may remove all blame, and by implication sin, will allow the erosion of the monogamous heterosexual couple as God's primary and only category. By extending biological marriage of a man and woman to same-sex couples on the basis of the intensity and the authenticity of their romantic feelings that they claim to have for each other, the category of marriage is changed, and combined with the elimination of fault, the concept of sex outside marriage being a sin disappears, redeemed by its intensity. Both James Martin and Austin Ivory are confident that when Pope Francis said every sexual act outside marriage is a sin, of course one must consider the circumstances which may decrease or eliminate fault. That this elimination of fault reflects the progressive claim that the quality of sexual intimacy outweighs the belief that the category of marriage is non-negotiable in being able to tell what is sin in God's eyes and what isn't, as it has always been everywhere and in all places. Well, whatever it was that Pope Francis meant when he insisted that the circumstances may eliminate fault, the progressives are insisting he intended to and is changing Catholic teaching on sex, marriage and sin. So now we know where the battle lines have been drawn.